Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Coach's Corner. It's good to see everybody this evening.
Good to see you too.
Glad to be back.
Real quick before we get started. Hello, I'm Sive. I'm not Vesper. I'm filling in because she is busy doing other things tonight. For those of you out there watching on Facebook, please drop all of your questions into the comments. These guys love questions and they will do everything they can to answer them all. And if not, they're good about going back and answering them later. So with that, I am going to hand it off to, I believe, Tristan.
Okay. Well, I think Thorfin is actually going to be the MC tonight, but go right ahead, Thorfin.
Okay, well, right on. Glad to be back here in Coach's Corner, and tonight we're going to try to tackle another one of our elephant in the room episodes. This one's going to be on crown calibration and kind of all of the things that tie to that. Okay, so good and bad. First, I'd like to welcome my coaches back. We've got Duke Eliahu, Viscountess Bess, and Viscount Tristan, as well as myself, Duke Thorfin. We're going to have a hoot, I think. This is a fun, big topic, and maybe even enough for another show. We'll have to see. But I'd like to start off by just talking a little bit about like my brief encounters with this in practices and things like that. And then this will kind of lead into maybe the first topic for me. I've heard people say at practice when you're fighting, I'm like, you know, that's good enough for practice, but not really good enough for crown. Right. And like, what does that even mean? Why is that an option? And what does that create inside of the SCA? I think that my personal experiences with it would be like, you know, why is it different to have a shot at practice or versus crown tournament? We should train to become the same across the board. But there's outlying circumstances, and we're going to go into that. And so one of the first things I would think would be we're going to talk about how adrenaline affects these people. And I think Tristan's got some stuff on this.
Yeah, you know, this is something where if there was one conversation I've had with so many fighters, both that watch a crown tournament and or even just people who are not fighters and they watch crown tournament, or fighters that go into a crown tournament wanting to know, okay, do I have to hit harder in crown than I would at a practice or in a regular tournament, etc. And the answer is, yeah, yes and no. It's not that everybody just decides to hit harder because it's a crown tournament. The fact, though, is that when people go into crown, they're almost always, and I'd say this of 99% of people that go into any highly competitive tournament, they're a bit more anxious, a bit more excited. They're on kind of you could say an adrenaline curve. Now, adrenaline has some very profound effects on the human body. At the higher levels, it can start shutting off all of your senses down to just sight. It can distort your perception of time. It can distort anybody who's been in a car accident knows like 2 seconds can be stretched out and it seems like it takes 2 minutes. Like this is how deeply adrenaline can affect us. Now, the thing to understand about adrenaline is that it can come in not in just one massive dose, like suddenly you see your car heading for a tree or a head-on collision, but it can come in small doses. And some fighters actually train to use adrenaline to try to get more performance out of their bodies when it comes time to be competitive. One of the first senses that adrenaline starts to shut off when it's preparing your body to withstand extreme trauma, which is, you know, you're in a fight for your life, you're having to survive a car accident or something like that. It will start to squeeze all the capillaries in your limbs, the blood, says it wants to push all the blood into your core so that it can be used and mitigate any wounds or damage that can happen from your limbs. In doing that, it considers your head a limb. So it will take blood out of your head. This can start to impair your memory. It can start to impair your perception. It will start shutting off the senses it doesn't need. One of the first ones it shuts off is the sense of smell. You really don't need a sense of smell to survive, so you won't smell anything in a highly adrenalized state. The second one is your sense of touch, your fine sense of touch and feel. Well, this affects SCA combat because that's what we use to determine how hard we've been hit. Your skin gives you input for, well, how hard did I just get struck? Well, When that sense gets shut off because you are starting to get into an adrenalized state, it changes how your body perceives it. So even though two fighters fight in Crown Tournament, they're best friends, they fight at practice all the time, and maybe they're both a little excited, they want to do really well, their body starts preparing to get into a survival mode, the adrenaline starts to come in, they both start not feeling as much as they did. Their legs and their arms start shutting down their sense of touch and sense of feel. So before you can get into, well, that guy's a cheating bastard, which is oftentimes what the perception is when somebody misses a blow or doesn't recognize one or doesn't feel it, their body chemically is going through a process that makes it very difficult for them to feel blows. Now, Thorfin mentioned that we've before the show, most of us have encountered this in a high level tournament. For example, one of my experiences was thrusting into the body against somebody who had decent body armor, not like incredibly great body armor, but they didn't feel it because they were in that excited state. And I had heard, advice later on, which was don't bother thrusting anywhere except the face in a royal tournament because of that, just because it's hard to, when you're excited, it's hard to feel just a push, which is basically what body thrusts or thrust to any other area are. So just, it's one thing to consider. There's more going on than just, is somebody deciding to take a blow or not? And that happens a little bit, the cheating bastard scenario, but it's, for the most part, people get excited and they don't feel the same way that they do in a normal practice.
I just want to say that I can fully support this. While not SCA, you may hear them. I have large dogs, and they got into a pretty serious and severe fight. And I ended up with a black eye. My cheek was black and blue from limb to limb. This isn't about don't put your face near fighting dogs, which I know, but this is about how you don't feel things. I didn't know my face was literally black and blue. I didn't know I had a blue eye or black eye. And I didn't know that I was pretty much nonstop bleeding from a puncture wound, simply because the adrenaline was so high as I'm trying to separate my dogs. So while Tristan was referencing SCA fighting, I want to point out that it's everywhere. We see it. And please don't say that, oh, well, it's because it's an SCA fight. No, it's a real thing. And if you're interested to see some yucky photos, send me a TM and I can show them to you.
It's your body trying to protect you and allowing you to continue in a high stress situation and not be distracted by pain or those type of things. Like, it's your body trying to do everything it can to keep you going.
Yeah, I had no idea how badly hacked up I was.
Mm-hmm.
Or how hurt I was until well afterwards, till after vet's visit and all the rest of it. So absolutely, this is something that can't be downplayed or dismissed in any way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And this is something common to the people that have survived attacks and violence. They'll come away realizing they've been hit or stabbed or cut or even shot, and they didn't know it. Adrenaline is that powerful. I don't know if anybody else wanted to kind of jump in with thoughts.
Yeah, I have something.
Yeah,
so there's a chain of perception that leads to the idea that you have to hit harder in crown, or there's a crown calibration. And so part of it, everyone who participates is also an observer. There are people who are non-participant observers in fighting, and there are fighters who also observe. And when people watch fighting and not really understanding the effect of adrenaline, because it's one of the reasons for authorization, is to get comfortable with the idea of being in that situation so you can actually make a correct judgment about whether or not you've been hit and where it was and how good it was. So But given the stress of self-imposed stress, really, of Crown Tournament, because people should treat it just like another tournament. The winners often do, but people who are under that high stress and adrenaline, who are not feeling a blow, and they're not consciously ignoring it, not feeling it, their opponent, who's also will become adrenalized in response and will just hit harder. And then the person who was hit harder, who didn't take the first one, is wondering, well, why is this person hitting me so hard? I'll hit them too. And people are watching this, and it lends a perception that you have to hit hard and crown, because people are hitting hard and crown because of this. And one way that I've addressed this, and other people have addressed this marshaling crown tournaments, and I've marshaled a lot of crown tournaments in multiple kingdoms where I've lived, is informing first of all, informing the fighters that they should communicate with each other. They should say, if something hits them, they should say something. Good, not good, so on. And their opponent it's informing their opponent. But if somebody doesn't say anything, then they may not even be perceiving that they've been hit. It may be that adrenaline, there may be something else going on. Could be armor, an armor issue. When that conversation occurs, I call it informative marshaling. The marshals are there to give fighters information to make decisions when they don't understand what's going on. But when that conversation takes place and it's resolved, I explain to the populace what's going on, because that then helps to derail that perception of needing to hit harder, because based on what they've seen. So people who watch fighting and don't understand can come away with incorrect impressions, and people who do know what's going on can see the force and can also come away with an incorrect perception of what's needed. So it's connected, and getting into a solution early. One of my solutions: fighters should communicate with each other, and it doesn't have to be a long conversation, as long as they just inform each other what's going on, and so on, and leads into my philosophy of marshaling as informing people what's going on so they can make the right decision. That quickly weeds out the rare people who intentionally ignore things. So, but that's how I think adrenalized lack of perception leads to that's one factor in leading to the perception that there's a higher crown calibration. And there actually can be, because of this effect, because of what people see and what they've experienced and what they've witnessed. And so there can be, but there doesn't have to be, is my point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we actually had a question from one of the listeners, and they talked about, the question was, should people be charged with their own self-awareness regarding an adrenaline response, which is, and from a coaching standpoint, this is 100% true. You are responsible for who you are on that field. If you decide to use adrenaline, you have to realize that you could be distorting your ability to recognize blows well. It's not your opponent's responsibility to do that. It's your responsibility. And I think the next topic we're going to talk about is, as a fighter, how do you recognize when your opponent may be in an excited or an adrenalized state? Because you need to know, see what they're going through in order to adjust appropriately. One of the things that happens in adrenaline, when adrenaline starts to come in, is normally you can see, not only with your cone of vision, but your peripheral vision, you can see what's going on around you. when your adrenaline starts kicking in, it starts shutting down your peripheral vision, and your cone of focus starts to shift to a very small, whatever you're directly looking at. It won't see peripheral vision. So if you see an opponent who's staring directly at you, usually you can read some body language, like, do they look anxious? Do they look like they're moving quickly or in sort of short, jerky motions? These are indications that somebody's in an excited state. You could view it kind of like watching a tiger pace back and forth in their cage, or a lion or something. They're in an excited state. They're nervous. They're anxious. If you work a little bit on reading people, you can start to read those behaviors as you watch them. Thing I always loved about SCA fighting is because it's so honest. What your opponent is showing you is such an honest part of themselves. You can easily read that. You can read when somebody's hyper focused, when they're absolutely dedicated to the part they want to hit on you, where they start staring at it or looking at it. And it's more than just seeing where their eyes are looking, like if they look down at your knees or something, but you can feel that intense hyper focus, and you can feel that excitement. And often you won't feel it at a practice unless somebody purposefully slips into that. But on a tournament field, especially at a high stakes tournament like a royal tournament, you can feel a difference. And it takes a little bit of playing in that to start to really get a feel for it. But those are some of the things to read. When you see that start to happen, that's when I in my opinion, this is just mine, is you want to actually slow the pace of a fight down. You want to make somebody like that I don't want to say pursue you. You want to draw them out, make them take the long way to get to you. Because if they're in that adrenalized state and you step in, you're kind of playing their game. You're going to step into their excited state, and you need to keep up with them. Instead, you want to slow the pace of the fight down. And one of those things is being careful. And this is where I would warn anybody that decides they want to try to use adrenaline in order to perform better in a high stakes tournament like this. There are a couple of really heavy downsides. And one of those is you become so narrowly focused, you miss major things. You can have somebody throw a shot you don't even see, and it hits you, that you would normally see in a practice. A lot of people that are attacked by somebody with a knife or with a gun, they'll come away and say, I don't even know what the person's face looked like, but that gun barrel looked huge, like they were staring right at the gun. They call it weapon threat focus. If you're a fighter, you cannot afford to miss what's going on with your peripheral vision. That's a tool you need to have. So be careful about using adrenaline. The second huge downside for using adrenaline is it's exhausting to the body. Being in an adrenalized state for 10 seconds feels like you've run a marathon for 15 miles or 20 miles. Like, it will drain you of energy so fast. And I've met fighters that have used that adrenaline, and their answer is, well, I'm going to train so hard that I'm in great shape that I can keep fighting like that for an hour and a half. And it's like, well, you can try it. That's kind of the hard way to go, in my opinion. Again, this is just my opinion. If you fight smart and relaxed, and you can watch and see what your opponent's doing, you will be in a better place than if your vision is limited because of the chemicals going on in your body, and you may not pick up something. The shot that takes you out is the shot you don't see. And if you can't see it, it's going to nail you. And it doesn't matter if the person's been fighting for 2 years or 15 years. If you don't see it, it's going to land. So that would be my recommendation for those people that are considering, like, should I use adrenaline as part of my competitive training regimen? Should I try to use that? Because there's a way that you can start to induce that stress within yourself to create an adrenalized state so that you can use it. But I've found that that's a dangerous path to go, and I would not recommend it. But that's just me. Anyone else have some comments on it?
Yeah, I just want to go back to Sarifkin's question about, shouldn't people be charged with their own self-awareness with regards to an adrenaline response? And yes, of course, we should all be responsible for what we're doing. But as Tristan elaborated, literally, you are not aware of things when you've got an adrenaline response going. So you literally don't know. Using me as a horrible example, I have issues with blood sugar. If my blood sugar gets too low, everything is a tragedy. Everything is awful. I'm in tears. It's terrible. I have a protein bar and suddenly everything's fine. The thing that I thought was terrible, it's fine now. I don't know why I was so upset about it before. So, but literally, because of the chemical reaction in my body at the time, everything was terrible. I changed the chemicals in my body. I have some more sugar. My brain can function normally. And I'm back to being hopefully a normal person. So when somebody's having an adrenaline response, absolutely, as Tristan said, they are responsible. We are responsible for every action we take on the field. But as observers, as marshals, as spectators, we can also be cognizant of the fact that, well, it looks like someone's a really big fat cheater head because, oh my God, they didn't take that shot. The reality is they didn't feel a shot. They would have taken a shot had they felt it, but they truly don't feel the shot. And I think that's something really important. So as Tristan says, we can either slow a fight down, we can, as marshals, not all kingdoms have active marshaling, but the person who feels that they threw a good blow, for example, could ask for marshal's input. There ought to be no shame in saying, I thought the blow was good. They're saying it's not. Can you give us what you saw? Can you tell us what you saw about this? Can you describe it? And then as the combatants and the marshals are talking, as adrenaline drains a little bit from the body, that's when you go, holy crap, my leg. Yes, that was a good shot. And we always teach everybody that there's that gray area. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. And we expect fighters to be able to make a decision on the fly. Sometimes it takes a second or two. Even if you're not with an adrenaline response, sometimes it just takes a second for my brain to register, ow. And so I think that that's something we really need to hold on to as spectators, as marshals, as fighters, both as the person who throws the blow and the person who's zoomed up on adrenaline. That's it.
Oh, lots of stuff. Yeah, it's like if you've ever stubbed your toe and it doesn't hurt immediately, but it's going to, it takes that second. I think one of the, one example is like in melee. And I know people who fought in large melees, the first time they were fighting in a large melee, I mean like a Pennsic-sized melee, Interkingdom War melee, there's so much going on and you get hit and you didn't see it coming and you're just, it takes experience and time for your vision to expand in scope so you can actually see what's going on. And that's part of calming down. One of the things I do before going out in a fight is I breathe. I make sure to breathe and slow my breathing. And I'll do that during the fight, because if you can slow your breathing, control your breathing, you are controlling your own, working to control your own response, your own adrenaline response. One of the things that you mentioned, Bess, you mentioned about low blood sugar, and this can affect judgment as well. Years ago, I was fighting in a tournament, large interkingdom tournament, pool tourneys, really big, huge tournament, hundreds of fighters, and doing really well, cruising along through pools, and then got to one pool and I was completely gassed, out of energy. Nothing. And I realized it was nutrients. There's a book called Nutrient Timing. There's a bunch of other books. What do you eat during the day in preparation? What do you do? What do you eat? I know a lot of people who won't eat at all during fighting. And I think that's terrible. I have my own way through reading and research and my own trial and error about what I have, but to and it's a little bit constantly during the day to keep me going, so I don't run out of fuel. I think that I once before a melee, a friend offered me a Red Bull, and I said, "Well, what the hell? I'll try it." It was terrible. I burned out very quickly because that's not how I fight. I don't fight with that. I'm more he described it as hot fighters and cold fighters. Are you, really gearing up like, before a big game, or are you calming down and slowing down the pace and slowing things down? So I think there are ways to address it, and Bess referred to active marshaling. I have found places I've gone that have a negative response, negative perception of active marshaling, thinking it's determinative marshaling. It's marshals calling shots for people and saying what's good and what's not. I prefer to refer to it as informative marshaling. I tell people what's going on. If they have questions, if they don't know, I encourage them to communicate and let them have the fight. And it's I think the many years I've been marshaling, I've only had to tell 2 people that they were dead and had to get off the field. And it was a safety issue because their opponent was just hitting them at will, and they couldn't defend themselves. It was like a boxing, the corner throwing in the towel or the ref stopping the fight because the person can't defend themselves. Those are the situation when I have done that, and it's that rare that I've had to do it. Usually, and there was a crown tournament, and it was the finals of a crown tournament. I was marshaling when something happened and a fellow's helmet got messed up, and he had one of the fighters, he had to fix it. I went to the other fight. Well, one fighter was adjusting his helmet. I went to the other and said, what happened? He said, well, I face thrust him with and it's, oh, it was good. Yeah, I think it was good. Went to the other fellow who was adjusting his helmet and said, your opponent believes that he landed a good face thrust. He said, oh, I didn't realize that that's what's happened. Of course, I'll take it. It was just information. Now, if I hadn't provided that information, he would have adjusted his helmet and gone on with it. And his opponent would have said, well, he's not going to take that. I'll really hit him, and would have thrust him very harder in the face, in which point the fighter who was thrust would have said, well, why do you hit me so hard? So, and I think we've all seen that. It's light. Wow, that's way too hard. And I think that there certainly are fighters who, in crown tournament, that gray area of maybe it was good, maybe it wasn't, that narrows to a razor's edge. It's good or it wasn't good. But that tends to widen the difference between a shot that's too light and a shot that's good. So good shots tend to be harder, and because they're further away from that gray area, that line. So that's a bunch of my random thoughts on the subject.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here for a sec, guys. I'm going to be going back and talking, because we've all been talking so much about a couple things that were, let's say, Tristan was talking about and Bess was talking about. I'm just going to try and put in some parts from me there. We were talking about the idea of training to use adrenaline as part of your actual physical fighting form, and the pros and cons thereof. And one of the things I got to say is that if you're going to do something like that, you have to train to be mindful. And what I mean by mindful is to be aware of what's happening to you physically, as well as what you're trying to do to the other person. And this is you having to take part of your combat brain and actually make sure it's watching out for those things. Like, you can see the guy come in and hit you, right? Even though you're in this hyper state, you still have to have some kind of training inside of you that can say like, hey, you just got hit in the leg, right? And so we got to remember to focus on having that kind of mindset that you can still be aware of what's happening to you, and that's super important. What's physically happening to you changes how your public perception is. People will see you on the sidelines and everything like that. So it's important to remember, however you train, be thoughtful and mindful of your own body. Okay. Bess brought up a thing about talking to the marshals, and I think that's a really great idea. And His Grace would kind of piggyback on that as well. One of the things I wanted to say was I don't feel like we really addressed the idea that maybe the first person you should talk to obviously is your opponent. And there could be a point where you've obviously starting to see something going on here. You step back, on guard, stay on guard because you're still fighting. And when that break happens, then you can say like, hey, so hey, just let you know, what about that leg shot, right? Now, try and say it in a way that it's not accusatory, right? But what you're doing is you're opening a dialogue, and if we can all maintain this dialogue all the time at practice, and then bring it with us to tournaments, it allows it to not have to always be accusatory. You don't want to always start off by saying like, hey, what about that leg shot? And they think they're calling me a cheater. What we're doing is we're having an open dialogue between two people that now you can say, I felt like it caught, I stepped out of a bit. And then they're like, great, okay. But also maybe they're like, wow, I didn't even know you hit my leg. And now we're addressing the part where that person's adrenaline. So, and then if they're like, no, I don't think you did, you can also at this point look at the marshal and say, Marshal, did I hit that guy in the leg? And then, because maybe from my angle, I couldn't tell, right? And the marshal can then, jump in and say, and it's different from kingdom and regions, how the marshalate works. Out here in the West, it's more if the marshals really don't get involved unless it's a safety issue or if they're asked to get involved. But I think that's okay to have them. That's why they're there. They're there to make sure everyone's safe and that the game kind of goes on in a manner that we're used to. So if you can say, hey, did you see that leg shot? And then this might be another thing where it's not just confirmation bias, for you to say, I got you in the leg. Now you have another person saying, hey, you know what? That guy definitely hit you in the leg. And then there's an opportunity for you to step back and say, am I too hyper focused to not realize what's going on in this tournament, and allow you then to kind of make a better decision. And hopefully, unless they're that guy that we talked about, the jerk, right? They'll actually be honest and say, oh, okay, maybe that was a good shot, right? So who wants to jump in next? That was me rambling on.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in. And when we started putting this episode together, we realized we could bite off more than we could chew, because there's so much that's related to this issue of fighting in a high stakes tournament. What happens when people are excited, when they want to fight at their competitive best? We've had so many conversations. I wish I had a nickel for every person that would sit down and ask me like, okay, well, tell me about this whole, is there like harder shots that you need to throw in Crown tournament, or, in a high stakes royal tournament or something like that? So many people have asked me and just wanted the honest scoop. And not only from just an observer standpoint, for like, I'm thinking about fighting in a tournament like this. What do I need to know? And the first thing I would tell them is, and this is just my opinion, but the first thing would be, you want to win by the sword. You don't want to win by trying to negotiate your opponent into taking a shot. You do yourself a favor and your opponent a favor by making it crystal clear. And I mean clear as all get out to somebody from watching 50 yards away, that you did not get hit and that you hit and landed a solid shot. Now, this does not come down to how hard you hit somebody. It really doesn't. The art of SCA combat is convincing your opponent that they are bested. That doesn't include having to hit them so hard they can't remember their name for 3 days. That really involves maneuvering. It involves patience. It involves being smart and hitting them in such a way that they had no idea that they got outmaneuvered. Like it's a strategy game. It's a chess game. And the idea that you just go out and start hitting really hard to overcome the adrenaline balance, that's something that I wanted to cover after we cover, all right, people can be in an excited state in a tournament like that. They may need to get hit a little bit harder, or you may need to overcome the lack of sense of touch or the lack of the tactile sense that they got hit. The way to accomplish this is not by just hitting harder, it's by fighting. And everybody that I've coached in tournaments like this, and myself, like, okay, I won't, firstly, there's two things that I want to accomplish when I fight in tournaments like this. One is, if I win, I want zero question, none whatsoever, that I got potentially hit and I did not acknowledge it. I wanted nothing to do with any of that. The second thing is, I wanted to protect my opponent from having the exact same thing. I wanted it to appear from the cheap seats that I outmaneuvered my opponent and struck in such a way that it was obvious that I was the victor. If I could not get that, I deserved to lose. And I was happy to lose. I just, no matter what happened on that field, I wanted there to be no question from the audience, from the marshals, from my opponent, that there was anything amiss. If you get to the point where you have to start negotiating with your opponent, be very careful. Afford them every courtesy to say, how about we decide this by the sword and not by how we negotiate this out? And the thing that the advice that I would give anybody is, it's better to give your opponent the benefit of the doubt and say, let's finish this by an actual fight, than by exactly say, I don't want to win by the fact that I somehow browbeat you into taking a shot that you aren't certain of. For me personally, I would never let my opponent take a defeat if he was not absolutely convinced that I got the best of him. I'd say, let's do another fight, or let's continue our fight. I don't want to win by you thinking that you may have been. I'll give you that benefit of the doubt. And this is one of those things where, you know, everybody's got their own philosophy with it. There's no absolute right or absolute wrong, but you do yourself a favor and your opponent a favor by saying, let's win by the sword and not win by kind of nitpicking back and forth. If that makes sense.
I'd like to jump in on something here. We've been talking about, well, you know, I take it in tourney, or I take it in practice, but I won't take it in crown. And my question is, why are you taking something in practice if it's not a good shot? Sorry, guys, I got dogs. When I'm fighting people at practice and they say, oh, I'm going to take that, but it isn't any good, I'm like, don't take it. All you're doing is teaching me to be a bad fighter. You're teaching me that here at practice, a bad blow is a good blow. And that's not what I want. If I am learning at practice that something that is really not a good blow is acceptable, if I take that to crown, that impacts my view of crown calibration. It's not the possibility exists. It's not that crown calibration is so much higher. It can be in some cases. As we talked, that gray area between good and bad is gone. But really, practice calibration is crap. And I've been learning to throw my shots poorly because people don't want to hurt my feelings, because it's practice, because they want to continue, because I'm smaller than they are. I don't know why, because it's a
Practice,
Thursday
who
night.
cares?
Yeah, it's practice. Who cares? But I care. And when people say that to me, I say, don't take it. Don't teach me to be a worse fighter. I need only take good shots. You know, and if I do something and it's not good, don't be embarrassed to death. It's okay. Like, I screwed up. And I think that's super important too.
Yeah, you know, there's one more thing I want to add in really quick, and that is, it's your own attitude that you are in control of. You cannot control your opponent's attitude. You cannot control their behavior. You can only control your own. The first thing is, it's your responsibility whether you got hit, whether it's a good shot, light shot, glancing shot. If you got hit by a shot, that was your defense that failed. It's your responsibility. The second thing is, if you are fighting an opponent that's not taking shots, if you can land a shot once, you can land a shot twice. If you can land a shot twice, you can land a shot 3 times. As long as you're alive, you can keep going. That is your responsibility. If you're outmaneuvering your opponent and you're landing shots, realize you are winning. Eventually, you will convince them that they've been bested, right? So don't allow yourself to be taken off of your own mental balance and focus when you are accomplishing your goal, when you are landing shots on them. But the defense part is your ultimate responsibility. If you want to win tournaments, do not be touched. I don't care if they're light shots, glancing shots, tippies, whatever. Don't let yourself be touched. Like, and you know, Brannis and Rongwalder, the other royal peers that we talked about in this forum will all say the same thing. You know, why risk having a shot land on you that may or may not be good? Your duty is to make sure that you do not get touched by that sword, and your defense should be up to it. If it's not, maybe you don't deserve to win that tournament. You keep working harder to make sure that you are not touched, and that you never have to get into an argument about, well, did it touch you hard enough, or maybe not, or maybe the crowd saw it, maybe they thought it was good and maybe it wasn't. You don't even want to go there. You don't want to tread into that territory at all. Like, if it touches you, consider it good, even though you may from a pressure standpoint view that it's not good. To me, these are just things that help safeguard your own image and reputation, as well as your opponents. You're there to guard theirs as well as your own reputation. Eli, you had a comment.
I would agree with that. That, treat it like it's a real sword. You wouldn't want to get, say, light, because real weapons do damage. So one thing I've done for people who are authorizing, fighters who are authorizing, sometimes they'll be very tense, and you can see it. You can see it in their body movement and how stiff they are, and I will I'll stop the authorization. I'll go over, I'll talk to them. I'll say, you know how to do this. You've been practicing. I want you just to close your eyes, take a deep breath in, let it out, and do that a couple of times. And then have them open their eyes and say, okay, now you're calmed down. You know how to do this. Go back and show us what you have been practicing. And it goes fine from there. And so because that's what I do with myself. Yeah, I'll calm myself down. And I think that's significant. I see that with and so you don't want to win a tournament by you want to persuade, and what we do is persuade the other person, as Tristan said, that they've been bested. The force of the blow is just one of those things. Placement sometimes is even more critical, and the fact that it's clean and unimpeded, as it says in the rules, that you have bested them. And there are times, as he said, if you do it once, you can do it again. I hit somebody, they said no, it wasn't good enough. So, okay, I did the exact same thing again, and they said no, I did it again. I just kept doing it until they finally said, yeah, I can't stop that. So I was resisting the temptation to hit harder. It's just hit cleaner is more persuasive than harder. Yeah, that's it.
I like the concept you brought up of the clean and unimpeded blow.
Yeah.
And I want to add one thing to that, and that is, when you want to convince your opponent they've been bested, that clean and unimpeded blow should be one that they see. If they don't see it, they may not be convinced that they got hit with it. And and this comes down to, I guess, the sublime art of SCA fighting is to deliver such a great blow, which is a combination of maneuvering, timing, and sort of a blend with your opponent's movements, that they see that blow get thrown and land when they could do nothing about it to stop it. Like what is the actual formula of convincing somebody they've been hit? And that's never, in my experience, it's not about how you loosen their teeth up by hitting them in the head so hard. It's when they see they've been outmaneuvered to such a degree with a combination of footwork or body placement, you're timing your movement to their commitment, because when they commit their body in and you move in such a way that you get an advantage position and they know it, sometimes you don't even need to throw a blow and they realize that you had them. Like you could have ripped their head off and they realize they could just go, okay, I know that this is, I would have been done. And thank you, by the way, for not actually loosening my teeth with a shot to the back of my head or whatever. These are all the times when that art of convincing somebody that they've been outmaneuvered and bested doesn't have anything to do with how hard that you hit. In fact, I would say that those two are almost inversely proportional. People can get hit really hard and still somehow think that they are in that fight. And before we started the show, we were talking a little bit about how the expectation that someone has, where let's say I'm a royal peer and I'm fighting a squire, they can't possibly beat me. And you get into that the scenario where in your mind you can't understand or even comprehend the idea of your opponent beating you. They hit you and it just throws your mind off because your expectation is on a whole different plane, and it short circuits your expectation. And I think that is something to appreciate. From a coaching standpoint, you always will tell a person going into a fight that you're coaching and say, never take any opponent for granted. Any opponent can hit you. Any opponent can beat you. You have to take this fight seriously, regardless of whether you think you outclass your opponent. They may have been training hard as nails for the last 6 months. You don't know. You may think you know who they are, but they may be a different person than you're expecting. So you have to fight at your peak. You cannot take them for granted. You take an opponent for granted and you good chance you're gonna get surprised, and not in a pleasant way. So I just wanted to toss that one in there. I guess we have a question from Facebook. It says, what are your thoughts on leaving the sword on the target you hit? It seems too risky to me. My answer for that would be, why leave the sword there? Recock it and fire another one. I mean, be ready to keep that sword moving and firing until the person is on the ground or has said good, or has somehow positively acknowledged that the fight is over. I've seen many people in royal tournaments deliver this gorgeous blow into an opening, and they freeze like they're going to take a picture of this gorgeous thing they've delivered. And wow, look at what I just did. And it doesn't get acknowledged, and they get hit right afterwards because they didn't recock. They didn't get back to a defensive position. You're not making a YouTube highlight reel here. You actually want to win a fight. Thorfin.
No posing and no capes.
Exactly. Okay.
That's right. No
I mean, come on,
posing.
man, capes are cool. No, the thing with the we were talking about, if once you hit the guy and you see those people stop to do that, I've seen people lose the fight because they're like, oh, that was such a perfect blow. And then the other person's like, well, I don't think it was a good blow. And then they hit you. And now your responsibility is to take blows that hit you. Right. And so, I was trained we throw what is called the convincer. So you come in, you crack the guy, and then you just go again, because it's okay if you hit him twice, right? It's just easier to move forward with it. The fight is decisively won, versus like Tristan said, if you stand there with a sword, posed like that, you're gonna look a fool when that guy hits you or it doesn't take it. You could have easily reloaded, fired again, right, and kept the fight going. And the thing is that sometimes it takes a second for people to say good, right? And if that's okay, it's okay if you hit them twice. They're wearing a helmet, for God's sakes, right? They're wearing protective gear. Don't feel too bad. They are trying to hit you with a club, right?
Mhm.
Remember that person was just trying to hit you with a club. Don't feel bad about hitting them with a club, right? And so I really think
And if you
that,
freeze somebody's mind for a second,
yeah,
like
oh,
if
absolutely.
you make them pause to think, exploit that.
Yeah.
Finish the job started. Don't let them like think and then well maybe and then get back on track and
hit them again. Make it obvious, right?
exactly.
The other thing when
Exactly.
Bess was talking about earlier, Bess was talking about at practice where people were, don't make me into a bad fighter by reinforcing bad habits. And I think
That
that's
was a
super
great
important
point,
to
by the
remember.
way, Bess. You're amazing. That was
Yeah,
awesome.
that was really, really important to remember that practice is to build form, guys. That's why we're doing this over and over again. It's to build good form, good technique, right? If you let someone establish bad habits in you, you'll carry them forward and unfortunately probably use them. And that's going to affect your fighting. So remember, when you're doing these practices, fight like it's real. Every fight is a real fight, guys. No one
And it
wins
ain't over
practice.
until the person's on the ground.
Yeah, no one
That's
wins
another
practice.
thing that
But
in
at the
Royal
same
Tournament.
time,
Yeah.
you gotta, it's okay. This is why we're doing this. So anyway, I just wanted to say that those were a couple of really great topics, and I think Bess actually has a statement here. Did I see it in the notes?
That sounds so formal. I have a statement I'd like to make, please. One of the things earlier, Tristan was saying that if a blow comes in and hits you, if it's unimpeded, even if it's light, take it because you don't want any question to your honor. And Tristan, I fully support you in that. It behooves me, though, as the person who threw a light but clean blow to go, God, I wish I could let you take that, but I can't. It was light. Because the reality is sometimes I just screw up. I might have great placement. It might be unimpeded and it's just too damn light. And I can't let anybody be embarrassed to death just because, I happen to hit them with a good but light shot. So while I respect that, I think it's really important that we encourage communication from both sides. As the light blow thrower, I really do need to say, I can't let you take that. I wish I could. I want to be able to let you do it, but I have to live with myself too. You don't want to win through negotiation, but I also don't want to win because the other guy just felt that they ought to take it because it looked okay.
Right.
The reality is,
And this is actually where we get into a good ground to be. Like if Bess, you and I were fighting in a tournament and I glanced something that was so light and you said, you know what, you did hit me clean, I would be obligated to say, you know what, that was absolute garbage. Do not take that. And I've done that to people in Royal Tournament. It's like, I'm not going to let you take that shot just because you didn't get a shield on it or you didn't glance it or you didn't dodge or anything like that. And this is where I got to give props to my friends down in Meridians. They came up with the best phrase ever when it came to dealing with people from kingdoms that hit harder than they do. They said, throw thunder and take the rain, which was throw hard enough that your opponents that come from harder calibration kingdoms can feel it, that it lands. But if you get hit light, be ready to take it. I think the society would be a much greater place if everybody took light and allowed their opponents to say, you know what, I know I hit you too light. Please don't take that. Let's continue fighting until we resolve this correctly. Like in my best of all worlds, that would be how all fighting would go in every tournament everywhere. But that is a good point. And if something is really, I mean, obviously so crazy light, you can easily say, yeah, that I felt that touch me, but there was really nothing behind it. I'd love to say you beat my defense, but there needed to be a little bit of pressure there. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Thorfin, you're muted, brother. Still muted.
Okay, no, I had a total
There we
crisis
go.
there. My computer wigged out. I couldn't find you guys for like 20 or 30 seconds. I was starting to panic.
Yeah, we were getting a little bit of flaky audio on the last portion. So
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, there's something going on here that is causing me a little bit of issue. So that's not cool. so I kind of got lost in my train of thought, guys, because I panicked, trying to get back my onto the computer here. So one of the things I wanted to say was we talked a little bit about at the beginning about this concept of saying practice, versus crown, and this kind of mindset is really toxic. I feel to fighting culture, to say that's a good blow at practice, but not at crown. And I think that we need to, if we can, try and like eradicate this idea, so that way we don't have that problem ever. We can just move through having good practices equal good fights in crown tournaments. And that's kind of where I wanted to go on that last topic. I'm trying to bring up my notes here on the side, guys. Everything got shut down on me here. So we want to jump in there.
Well, while you're bringing that up, I actually want to touch on that. I think that's a good point where from a coaching standpoint, or even from a fighter standpoint, like how prepare yourself for that kind of a fight? And in my opinion, when you outmaneuver your opponent to the point where you're basically juking them out of their own socks, now you're getting to the point where you are becoming a premier fighter. And mind you, it's easier to do that to somebody who's a newer fighter or an intermediate fighter, or you are in you have more experience than your opponent. But when you start to get to the level where you're winning or being in the final four of a crown tournament or a high level tournament like that, that's the level of fight you want to be at. It's not how hard you hit somebody. It's how you can outmaneuver them, how you can read their body language and manipulate them and avoid yourself being manipulated. Like that's the level of fight that you're gonna be at when you are regularly competing for winning these tournaments. If you're in the mid-level and you're still struggling to get halfway through those tournaments, the reason is you're probably too focused on just hitting hard or fighting with intensity or getting into an adrenalized state or some of these other traps that are common to people that are in that intermediate state. The people that go from the intermediate state to the advanced state are the ones that figure this out. They realize I need to play smart, not just play hard or play vigorous or just throw more blows or be more aggressive. The ones who fight smart are the ones that go to that next level. So from your own standpoint, if you're listening to this and you're kind of wondering, like, how do I deal with this? Don't just think you got to hit harder, even though, yes, your opponents may be excited. They may be adrenalized. They may not feel blows the way they normally would. Realize that you're going smarter. And the other thing that I would caution you to do, and I've seen a lot of people do this when they are going to crown, they're like, I want new armor. I want a new helmet. I want to jump in and I want to re-rig myself. Please do not do that. It throws your calibration way off. It takes probably 6 months to get into a new helmet where you repad it so it sits the way that it should. You feel blows with it, you get consistent with it. Don't change everything up to look like $1 million, to look like a rock star in a crown tournament. Go with armor that you know with. If you want to upgrade your armor, do it a year or 6 months before crown and get used to it. So you don't fall into the trap of, well, this is new leg armor, this is new arm armor, this is new shoulder armor, this is new helmet. You never want to use a weak excuse like that because your opponent's not going to buy it. The marshals are probably not going to buy it. The crowd's probably not going to buy it. It might be true, but they may not. They may perceive it totally differently. So, Thorfin, you had a comment.
Yeah. So we've talked about how to recognize and even how to deal with facing an opponent that has some kind of physical thing actually affecting their mental capacities on the field, right? We talked about the adrenaline and how that works. Now let's talk a little bit about, at least I think this would be a fun topic to talk about, would be now that we found out that that's not happening to this person, how do you address the fact that this person has calibration issues in crown tournament that they don't have at practice, right? I actually had this happen to me when I was coming up. There was a guy who was higher ranked than I was, and he just did not want to take blows from me. And it became kind of notorious that every crown tournament I was going to run into this guy because he was a high enough, skilled fighter that over the course of the day, the collision is going to happen. The marshals would all come out, and there'd be like all these marshals standing around, which is not good for the both fighters, because mentally you're like, why are the marshals here now? But it would be, at the end of the day, I had to just keep hitting him, like Tristan was saying. There was no way to change their mind at that moment with this one particular fighter. And I'm wondering if you guys have encountered this, and how did you guys address it? I took Tristan's path there, and was to just keep throwing blows. If I can hit him once, I can hit him 5 times, and if I hit him 5 times, I can now hit him 9 times, and eventually, for some reason, I won. Right. But I think that if you guys have some feedback on this, I'd love to hear it. Bess, you got something? Jump in there.
Yeah, so I myself have experienced something similar, and it's not wrong to ask for a second set of eyes. If someone, for whatever reason, feels that I can't kill them, and I think I can, it's not wrong to speak to the marshal ahead of time to say, I believe there could be some issues here. This is a history between me and this person. I could be hypersensitive, because at this point, I could be hypersensitive. It could be sitting on my shoulders. I could just be looking for them to be a big fat cheater head, and they're not. So to have a second set of eyes, or multiple sets of eyes for the marshals to say, I am requesting that, if I look over to you, like if I got issues, I'm going to step back and I'm going to look at you. At that point, I'm inviting you in, especially if, say, they outrank you, especially say you were an unbelt and you're talking about somebody of dukely, calibers. You've got his grace or her grace, so-and-so coming in, and it can be hard if you feel that there's a bit of a history there. So a neutral second set of eyes, and it just occurred to me now, but it might be possible to have the marshals remind everybody, and I do think this is important, not just in this situation, the only currency we have in the SCA, all we have is our renown and our reputation. Damaging this in any way, shape, or form reduces the only thing we have of value truly within the SCA. People don't know, I'm up in Eldemere, people don't know if I'm nice, if I have good garb, if my dogs are annoying. They are. They know nothing about me. I put everything I have on the field, and that's what people are going to talk about. And I think it's important that we guard that. And it's helpful to have people who can help you. And I think it's important to say, I truly think the marshals can be helpful. Eliahu, I forget your exact phrasing, but it was, the intent is that the marshals are there to help, not to cause
informative marshaling.
That's it. And there's nothing wrong with that. And as I say, I could easily be wrong, because maybe now there's been some years between us, and now I'm a little tense too. So they're informing me as well. No, Bess, at practice, you've been throwing blows wrong, because they've been taking them wrong at practice, and you have this history. So that's how I have dealt with things in the past, is ask for marshals for help, and I would probably do so again in the future.
So I have a couple of stories that are illustrative of this, not just for the sake of telling stories, although my wife says I have a story for every occasion. Seems to be true. There's a principle that you gain more renown by losing well than you do by winning badly. That the renown you gained in a lifetime can be lost in an instant. And I've seen this happen. But when there's social, something referred to as social calibration, and which is a horrible idea. And I know that way back when I was an unbelt, I was fighting a knight in Crown Tournament, and we hit each other and stopped. And the marshal came in and said, "Gentlemen, I saw 2 blows. What's going on?" And my opponent said, "Well, mine was good." Just in that tone, I said, "Well, either they were both good or neither was good." And the marshal said, "Well, let's continue that." And I do admit I got a little angry and I hit him again, probably harder than necessary. But I learned in that instant that veritas is also a virtue, truthfulness, honesty. You have to speak what you are honestly perceiving. We've talked about the ability, the effect of adrenaline and excitement on clouding that judgment, but you have to speak as honestly as you are able in the situation. There's another situation years later. By this time I was a Duke. I was fighting in a crown tournament against a fellow who has the accoutrements of a knight. Yeah, you get my meaning. And everything he threw, he was, what about that? What about that? What about that? What about that? And he honestly wasn't hitting me with anything that I could feel. It turned out later he was using an uninspected, broken sword. And he was expecting tip shots to be good. He actually stamped his feet up and down and whined like a child. I laid down. I laid down on the ground and he gave the fight to him. He hadn't hit me with anything good, but it was not worth sacrificing my renown at that point. If I persisted, his renown was already trashed by his actions. If I persisted, mine would have joined him. And I was unwilling for that to happen. Winning a fight, if I can hit once, I can hit twice, I can hit 5 times, I can hit 10 times. If I can win a tournament, I can win another tournament and another tournament and another tournament. Each tournament, whether it's a crown tournament, is not the only opportunity. There will be another tournament. And not winning one is not worth sacrificing my renown, my self-esteem, my who I am for that. So those are a couple of stories, but they're illustrative of the point. You have to be honest. If you think something that hit you wasn't good, say so. Now, if your opponent thinks it was good and the marshals think it was good, you have to consider that you may be wrong, that it actually was good. You're in the armor, you're the one feeling it, but I say clean and unimpeded, appeared to have sufficient force because it moved, or I don't even say it, I said clean and unimpeded, and the sword moved through sufficient space with body movement that it appeared to have been able to deliver sufficient force, but the person in the armor has to decide. And one more incident when I was fighting someone, another Duke, and he threw something and I didn't think it was good. And he said, well, what about that? I said, you wouldn't take that if I hit you with it. If I hit you with it, you wouldn't take that. He said, okay, that's fair. Well, then why did you expect me to take that? That was the part I didn't say, but we've been talking about, and it sounds like we're delivering mixed messages here, and I understand that because it's a complicated issue. You have to be honest, but you also have to accept the idea that you might be wrong as well.
Sure. I wanted to jump to something, and I kind of wish Bronis was on this episode, but I picked up so many morsels from him that he's probably forgot about. One of the things that always helped me in facing an opponent who was more experienced than I was, and I was faced with I could land a shot, but I always question myself, could I land another one? I don't know if I can, maybe that was luck. And he gave me something many, many, many years ago that wound up ringing true. And he said, if you're still alive, you're winning. you still have the possibility of winning the fight that you are in if you have not gotten hit yet. And I really had to contemplate that advice, because it came down to, was your defense tight enough to make sure that you're still alive? If your defense was sloppy, maybe you deserve to get hit. Maybe that should stop your offense. But if your defense was tight and your maneuvering was good and you could hit somebody, and this came back to the, if you can hit them once, you can hit them again, you can hit them a third time, you can hit them a fourth time. If you are in the mindset that you're comfortable, you're comfortable with your defense, you can outmaneuver your opponent, you can hit them. It doesn't matter if they take your shots or not. Everybody sees, the crowd sees, the marshals see you landing your shots on your opponent. And just like Eli said, does it matter that you win this tournament right here? Does it matter that you win this fight right here and right now? Is that what matters to you? Or is it that you are besting your opponent? If you're besting your opponent, it really doesn't matter what they think. We come back to that. The art of SCA fighting is convincing your opponent they're dead. Some opponents, just a very few, not many, will not be convinced that you can best them, regardless of how many times you hit them or regardless of how hard you hit them. Just know that in yourself, if you keep your defense tight, your maneuvering good, your posture solid, your stance solid, you can keep hitting them, and you can hit them at will. What more do you want? I mean, that really is the point of fighting, is can you do what you are set out to do, which is protect yourself and deliver shots. The fight keeps going. You're still alive. You're still winning. And, it causes us to sort of reflect from a philosophical point, what are we in there to do? If you're just in there to win tournaments, maybe it's time to revisit why you're fighting. We all want to win tournaments. We want to win fights. We want to win, but make sure that you're not fighting for the wrong reason and that your focus is where it should be. And it's actually kind of fun. I got to the point where I sort of liked facing opponents that didn't want to take shots, because I could start to outmaneuver them and just hit them at will, and just kind of think to myself, when are you going to get tired of getting hit? When are you done with this? Because I can keep going all day. And it's kind of fun. Now, granted, there are opponents that are high class, that you land one shot and that better be the one they take, or you won't get another chance. But those are very, very few and far between in terms of opponents. So it's all in where your mind is, what you allow your mind to do. If you start to give in to frustration, to anger, to rage, to entitlement, or whatever you'd want to call it, now you're allowing yourself, your spirit, to be taken off balance. Keep your balance, keep your poise, keep your grace when it's being challenged. Like, that's the mental part. So, all right, anyone else?
You got me thinking about, like, kind of the idea that as you come up through training and these things, you start to want to have achievement. You want to achieve things, and everyone here has kind of touched on this and or said it outright, that there's nothing more valuable than your own reputation, your renown. And these are things that you can never, I mean, if you lose your renown, there's almost no way to replace it. It's a very long, arduous path to get back to where it was at. So as you move forward through these, these steps towards these ideas of achievement, don't let those expectations and goals become more important than actually remembering that the value of your renown is it's too important for your fighting career. And honestly, it would change everything. I saw a very, very famous fighter who basically lost one crown. He won one crown, but he lost it, and because of that, he lost all his renown for his whole career. So 20 years of good works were down the drain for 4 months of being in charge, and it's not worth it. It's the price that's not worth paying. So I
Not worth
remember,
it even in kingdoms where the reign is longer than 4 months.
yeah, right. No problem here. Yeah, so I think that is something to take to heart, guys. As you're out there practicing, and we all want to have achievements. We all want to see success, but don't sell your success at the cost of your renown. And so, or vice versa, switch that. But so that's something I just wanted to really throw out there. Anyone got anything on jump on that one?
Well, and I would say too that it's easy for us. Human beings are typical to animals where when there's conflict, we want to rise to face the conflict and we want to prevail with that. SCA fighting is one of those things where we're in a unique position to not only protect our own renown, but we have the ability to protect our opponent's renown. You can, with your own grace, allow your opponent to not fall prey to their own ambitions, to say that. And that would come to what Bess was talking about earlier. If you glance a shot on somebody and they want to take it, to say, please don't take that shot. Let's fight this out to a satisfactory end, and then announce it to everyone. Say, here's what's going on. The crowd is not confused. The marshals are not confused. You and your opponent are not confused. You can have that level of generosity and courtesy to your opponent, but you can get on the downside of that curve where either of you or both of you start bickering over, okay, well, was that shot good? Was that, and we see this on the battlefield more than we see it in tournaments, but we also see it in tournaments. We must guard ourselves about being seduced into that dark side of our spirit of we want to win and we want our opponent to basically submit to us, and we're willing to either browbeat them or somehow manipulate them into, out of shame or whatever, to take a shot that really wasn't that good. And I think that the best safeguard to this is win by the sword. Just say, if there's any question, let's just keep fighting. Let's not do this and make it be a drama for the crowd or drama for the marshals or drama for us back and forth. Let's win by the sword. And it's a complicated topic. There's no hard formula to sort it out. But as long as you take care not to drift too far or let your opponent drift too far into making this a political issue more than a let's have this be a fight issue. Let's actually do this by winning a fight. And there's, like with all of life, you can do just about anything if you do it the right way. You can do just about anything the wrong way, and it will seem like the wrong thing, if that makes sense. It's not so much what you do, it's how you do it, I guess, is my point. Bess, you had a comment?
I do, actually, and this is specifically directed to the unbelts who are watching or will be watching this. I think sometimes the perception is if I don't do well, if I lose a bout, if I lose this, I take a blow where I ought not to, that the possibility exists that the knights are watching and all they're going to see is like, frack, I'm a loser. They're never going to knight me. I'm never going to be elevated. But though we've had lots of head blows, we're not stupid, and we are able to see we're able to see what's going on. We're able to watch, and the ability to, as Tristan says, take a blow, to discuss it, to accept the input, the additional input from the marshals. We watch these things too. We see who you are. Is there grace under pressure, for example? And I think these things, as much as your prowess, are things that your knights will be looking for, your royal peers are looking for. So please don't think that were you to lose a bout, that there's no shame in losing a bout. If you lose a bout here, or if you don't win, that you won't be knighted. That's not the case. And in fact, as we've indicated, in some cases, quite the reverse. You win great honor by not winning. So that's what I'd like to add.
Good point.
Yeah, I could add to that a story, but I think I've already told enough stories. That yeah, I think, some of what we were talking about reminded me of the rules from Zombieland. Um, Cardio and double tap, right? So just hit it again. I think that we didn't touch much. We did talk about hitting somebody where they see it, but it's seeing it, not necessarily seeing it, although placing a sword in somebody's ocular arm is always effective. But where they understand that they can be hit. I know that in melee, very big confusing melees where there's a lot of input and people aren't necessarily, they're adrenalized, they aren't necessarily registering things because of all the input. I make it a point to hit somebody twice. The first time is mostly to get their attention. The second time is for it to be good. But the same thing holds true sometimes in individual combat. If a person doesn't have the mental conception of a possibility that they can be hit in an area and you hit them there, they may not be mentally able to register it. That's another kind of block. It's not adrenaline. It's just it's a perception thing. But most of the blows that we hit somebody with or get hit with are in the usual places. And so the place, the hitting someone cleanly with sufficient force, because it's clean, unimpeded with sufficient force, is really the key. And maneuvering yourself into position to do that, maneuvering them out of position to do that is really the key. Do people hit harder in Crown Tournament? Well, if they are only relying on the amount of force with which they hit to be the persuasiveness, then they may be. And as Tristan said, not necessarily the most compelling component.
He did a read it or something.
So I think that's it for me.
Cool. Yeah, I guess I would wrap this up by saying the goal of fighting in Crown Tournament or any high level tournament is to make it crystal clear to your opponent, to the marshals, to the crowd, that you have delivered a solid telling blow. And that really has to do more with maneuvering and setup than it does with how much PSI you deliver through the sword. A lot of that has to do with your own body position. And this comes right back to the coaching training standpoint. Landing a stick on the side of someone's helmet doesn't do any good if you're up on your toes. You can't deliver power reliably that way. So this comes back to your own form, to your own footwork, to your maneuvering, to your timing. And that's where it's, I guess it's maybe not sexy to say, well, you can do this super crazy shot and land every time. But if you go with solid fundamentals and make that part of your fighting all the time, you have what you need every day at practice, every tournament you fight, that will serve you when it comes to those high level tournaments. If you're looking for tricks and looking for just adding more adrenaline or more strength when it comes time to really perform, that's the false path. And you won't find what you think you will find by pursuing that. So make your fighting clean, make it crisp, make it well maneuvered, really focus on how to manipulate your opponent, how to adjust to their movements. If you do that, sooner rather than later, you will find that you are outmaneuvering your opponents. You are hitting them where they don't have any defense. And that is what will convince them they've been bested, not just how hard you hit them. I guess that's how I would wrap it up.
Okay, so my ending thing would I agree with Tristan, really learning your fundamentals and having trust and faith in those is going to go so far into helping you be able to best these type of situations and having good form. You build that at practice. And so we talked earlier about trying to maybe make a local change in your practice where we don't talk about the idea of this kind of like toxic, blow calibration for crown versus practice versus crown to build better form for all of us fighters as we move forward, right? So that's something that we can all take away from tonight. I want to say thank you to our coaches, Duke Eliahu, Viscountess Bess, and Viscount Tristan. You guys are always really great to talk to. And coming up Monday, we're back to having video analysis with Sir Helga, and those are always pretty fun. So tune in and check that out. People, if you don't know what that one is, guys, people put their videos of their fights forward for people to analyze them, and then they kind of break them down with them. It's really cool and very interesting to watch. Then after that, we do have starting the 30th, which is next Friday, we have Secrets of Training for the Crown Tournament. And that one's going to be a barn burner, I'm sure. That's going to be a great one. I recommend everybody tune in for that one. You guys keep watching these, and we'll keep making them. So everyone have a great rest of your weekend, and ciao.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Bye,
Rock and roll in
everybody.
your hearts.